to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
You know, the one that you just addressed is a big one. Like, man, this why is everything about race? And that tells me a lot. When somebody says that to me, again, number one, it tells me that they're operating from an uninformed place.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, it tells me that the system that's been put in place is not broken. Everybody talks about how the system is broken. And I often say the system's not broken. The system is working exactly the way it was supposed to work. Right. And so you have this
Good point.
This group of people who have bought the lie.
Mm-hmm.
And the lie is, so there's these racist ideas that have been put in place really since the 1400s. Gomez Aurora is a name, 1453, I think, appointed by King James in England to go on this expedition to Africa. And so Aurora comes back from Africa and he writes the first book that purports these racist ideas about African people. And from then on, 1400s, then in the 1500s, Leo the Africanist, which is an African dude that was converted to Catholicism in 15 something. He then writes another book. Now he's African, but his book is it has just as many racist ideas in it as Aurora's does. He basically takes Aurora's and then puts a lot of his stuff into it. And so, of course, everybody's like, well, he's African. They have to be true. And so these racist ideas are then passed down from generation to generation, right? And then you have the transatlantic slave trade, which these racist ideas are great because what they do is they demonize and dehumanize a people group so that these other folks can make money off of this transatlantic slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't stop after the Civil War. Those racist ideas continue and on up to this day.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I try to tell my students is I try to take the history of the past and help them draw not a dotted line, but a solid line to what's happening today.
Yeah.
And so your question is, the person that talked to you is like, well, man, why does it all have to be race related? And, it's just a murder. It's not just a murder.
Right.
And if you know the history, but that guy is one of a million that have been infiltrated by these racist ideas, right? And so, and part of those racist ideas is, okay, not only are they inferior, but they've been given some rights, and so they should be able to pull themselves up by their own bootstraps.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all did. This is a meritocratic society, right? So if you just work hard, you can get what you need. So the reason that they're in this position is because they don't work hard.
Right.
That's the lie.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
You don't understand all the policies that have oppressed people who have been working hard.
Yes.
For centuries,
Yep.
right? And for 400 of those years worked hard for nothing.
Yes.
Building this country, right? And so you get these comments, and what I hear immediately when I hear stuff like that is, man, he's believed the lie. And I can say that because I believed the lie for many years, right? If you're fed something often and through media, through school, through interactions with people, eventually you're going to believe it. And so one of the ways that I disarm a lot of white people when I'm talking about this is I tell them my story, like how I felt about myself based upon the racist lies that have been told to me. And again, that's through media, movies, whatever you want to, whatever medium you want to look at. You begin to believe that stuff. And so it wasn't until I left corporate America and came to Tennessee to go into ministry, and I began to pastor white people. And at that point, now I'm sitting in my pastoral office, I'm counseling these white families. And that's when I was like, these folks are just as jacked up as I am. That was my first, and see, because in our society, man, you're told, man, white is right. They got it all together, right? That's the reason why they're so successful. It's not because policies have have kind of ushered them into their success. It's because, they're the supreme race, right?
Wow.
And so when I got here and I started pastoring white folks, I was like, man, okay, so there's some lies here somewhere.
Yeah.
And so you get off comments often. You get challenged a lot, right?
Mm-hmm.
I remember I was teaching a class, and
as a black person, you get challenged a lot, or as a teacher, or all of the above?
I'm going to say both.
Okay.
Now, if you go to this gentleman and his wife and ask them, they'll say it had nothing to do with race. I know they will, but and maybe it didn't. In this particular instance, maybe it didn't. I try not to pull a race card unless it's absolutely necessary. So I'm teaching the class, and I am teaching out of the book of Acts, and I am talking about Cornelius and Peter's relationship and how their relationship is a great picture of the relationship that could happen between blacks and whites, Jew and Gentile, blacks and whites, right? Because Jews and Gentiles, they were the ones that were at like butting heads all the time back in the day. So I use that. I use it as a juxtaposition to black and white relationships now. And man, they challenged me on that. Like, I don't see where you see that. And I'm like, and this was in the middle of class. And
wow.
And just very combative, right?
Right.
And even told me, and I see that smirk on your face. And so I just grinned, and I was like, sir, I don't know what the smirk is that you see, but I'm just really trying to answer your question, and so we can move on in class.
Was that a student?
This was an older gentleman. This was I taught a class at a church, a local church here.
This is someone from within the church.
Yeah. He was a fairly new member, and the reason I say it may not have necessarily been race is because the smirk that he saw on my face is a friend of mine had told me about this guy before the class. He said, now, I need to let you know that, because he's done this in other classes taught by white folks. So from that perspective, I was like, okay, this is probably not race. He's just, I don't know if I can say this on your radio.
You can.
Yeah, he's just an asshole.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So
well, that's the thing too.
Right.
A lot of people are just assholes.
Right. And so in that particular instance, I really didn't see it as race.
Yeah.
But I'm just reminded, what I thought to myself is, man, if I were a white professor, would he have challenged me that way? Like open like that? And now, again, this is something that white people never have to think about.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
But it's something that always comes across our minds. Like,
yes.
And my wife was in the class, and she was hot. She was heated. And then his wife jumped in a little later on, and she had a point.
Oh, no.
It was interesting, man. So you learn to deal with fragility, which is really what it is.
Yes.
And a lot of times it is coming from an uninformed place.
Yes.
And so as long as I have that in mind, I can deal with it a lot better than I did previously.
Yes.
I used to get really angry.